At the moment, anyway, right?
Yeah, there you go. I thought he wanted to make a quick exit out the door.
If you guys caught passes, you're gonna win that game.
We're live?
Oh my
Okay.
gosh. 30 fucking touchdowns.
So we are live, so I guess we can get started when you're ready, Frank.
Very good. How about a roll call? Sylvette,
Frank Facciano,
here.
Paul Anthony,
I'm here.
Robert Brooks, John Hayes, Ron Heckman, Larry Hamburger, Mike Stershik,
I'm here.
Jonathan Strauss.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Okay. Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
All right, good enough. Then we'll proceed to our action items. We all got the minutes from October. I need a motion to approve them. Mike? Second, Paul? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay. Financial statements for October. Todd, you got like 4 things. Starting with this.
He's doing them in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Morning.
Happy,
Thanks.
happy post-Eagles win. Oh, there you go.
Happy 9/11. Strike that from the minutes.
Who has his glasses on for that?
Yeah, I know.
We're going to start out, like we always do, with the traffic. And as you recall, we talked about the fact that we expected traffic to kind of pick up a little more in October, November, and you can see that. So for October, we had almost 85,000 passengers, and that was our best number since 2004 for the month of October. And you can see we're almost neck and neck, less than 100 year-to-date versus last year, and we're ahead of where we were in 2019, slightly above that, a few thousand. But again, a lot of that driven by the Allegiant. Some of you, thank you for coming out last week for the celebration, the Melbourne celebration, but again, a lot of that driven by Allegiant. You can see down there almost a flip-flop. Allegiant 415,000, and in 2019, all the others had 480. So you can see really what's driving our traffic, and that's kind of highlighted up there by the fact that legacy traffic is still behind. Always show, we just kind of condensed this a little bit, show our year-to-date load factors. Again, the seats we get, we do use. We're at almost 87%. We're at 83% in 2019. And the bus is moving along. American, obviously, the fact that we're doing it through the checkpoint is working out a little bit better, but United holding steady at around 58%. And this is just showing it on a graph, and you can kind of see the seasonality of our traffic there, where we are up there 2022 with a slight lead over 2023, but the top 3 there are all around the same amount. Comparing us to all U.S. airports, like we always do, you can see that compared to all U.S. airports, our seats are down 10%, and our throughput is only down 4%. So you can see that when we get our seats, we use them, as compared to all airports where their seats are up 18 and their throughput is only up 2. So that's just telling you, when we get seats, we use them. Everybody else is getting more seats, so hopefully on the back end of this recovery, we'll see more seats come our way. Again, compared to our peers, and we're on the back end of this recovery, as I indicated, you can see that we're continuing to do better than our peers. So those numbers there, White Plains, again, they added Breeze. That's why they're at the top of that list. Then we talk about the month of October. Again, this is one of the months where we deferred some of our cares. We originally had 300,000 of cares in our October budget. We pushed some of that cares back into next year, which we'll talk about when we talk about the budget. But you can see, even with pushing that back, we still end up doing better than budget. So we were almost 300,000 of net income, and we had a budgeted number of less than 39,000, and that included the cares. Net income without cares and full staff, you can see up there is 143,000. I'm blowing through these because it's a good month. I know nobody wants to hear me talk about this stuff when it's a good month. Nobody wants to hear me talk about it when it's a bad month, but certainly when it's a good month, we can keep it moving. Here we are year to date. Again, you can see our budget number was about 1.5, and you can see where we are year to date, over 5.5. But again, a lot of that driven with our CARES, favorable versus budget, over $4 million. And net income, again, still would be positive if without CARES and full staffing, which is something that we continue to kind of monitor. And then this is our projection, a little bit lower than that over the next 2 months, probably because of some of the end of the year accruals and some of the stuff that are in there. But again, quite favorable versus budget, more than double where we were, where we projected. Again, our streak is going strong. I would like this number to be 12 out of 12. I don't know if we're going to make it, but certainly we're doing just as good as we were last year, and hopefully we'll have 11 for 11 next month, at the end of this month. And then I'll talk about our top cost centers here. Top 3, parking, CARES, aviation lease, and you can kind of see what's going on down the list that makes up that 5.5 million there. Again, without CARES, that number goes down some, as you can see up there. Break down where the major budget impacts are. Again, that full staffing number and some of that wages and stuff is in there is a reflection of the winter and some of that winter premium rates because we had such a mild winter. That was reflected in there. But again, you can see interest. We've done a really good job of kind of moving money to get the best interest rates, and the fact that interest rates are going up has helped us as well. And you can see contract services, that's one of the things we talked about as far as the demolition and some of those things that we haven't done. And you can see where we are year to date, breaking it down between personal and non-personnel. Again, we're around 14 versus budget, but still up significantly from last year at 13%. Breaking it down by full-time, part-time total. I know nobody looks at FTEs, but the FTEs are down there, and you can kind of see that's really hours. But you can see even though these numbers are slowing down a little bit from where they were in 2021, they're still growing, which is a good thing. I think we're in somewhat of a recession, so the fact that our numbers are going up is a good thing. Breaking it down by department, there you are. Breaking it down there. And then this is our cash flow. And this is a lot of the reason that that's in yellow is because it's just kind of flowing into our 2024 budget. So a lot of those numbers are changing with the budget. And you can see what's going on with some of those. Here. And then you can see down there in 29 and 30, our cash on hand was 69,000 and change for 2023 budget. You remember we had an estimate last month of about 74,000. Final number came in at 73,806. So you can see where we are. And even when you show it, that's the lowest month that we show over the next 14 months is at 189, and you'll see that later when we go over the budget. And this is kind of showing it on a graph a little bit further out, 12 months out. Any questions? Again, it's a good month. Just they are a quick and easy one there. It's a good month.
Okay. Very good with that. Motion to accept for presentation to the board, Robert
I'll second.
and Paul. And all in favor?
Aye.
Right. Next is operating budget presentation.
Oh, this I'll hang out here a little bit.
Just hang on.
Remember, we went through this last month, and a lot of this is just updating our assumptions, but a lot of this is old hat if you were here last month, so if it sounds a little repetitive, bear with me. Again, we always start out with our vision. That never really changes. We want to be fiscally responsible, strategic, and manage expectations. Our surroundings and things around us are different challenges that we face, but those three things never really change. This year, again, those things rarely change. The only thing that's really slightly changed is number 2, because we're really trying to think about that soft landing in 2026. What's it going to look like when we don't have that cushion of CARES, and we want to keep that in mind. But everything else that's usually the same ones we've had probably for the last, 5, 6 years, because again, it's about our organization, people, and infrastructure, and kind of dealing with those three things and balancing out how we manage our resources. So our assumptions, again, are key because this is our plan, what we're thinking at this point. The number there did change a little bit from what we gave you last month. It's slightly up when we got our final numbers on our rates and charges from our consultants. This went up about 100,000 on that. 1.463, you see it in green there, number one. I think it was 112, 1.2 last month, something like that. So again, that's the final number, 1.463, a positive number, but obviously you can see it's reliant on CARES. So we start out with 1.2 negative without CARES, but obviously with the CARES, 2.7. And just to kind of give you a little history, and I'll talk about it a little bit, the original plan was to use 2 million in CARES for this year and then 1 million in 2025, because obviously we have to use it all by the end of 2025. We were running a little bit better, so we actually put approximately 700,000 into 2024's budget, and then another 700,000 into 2025's budget. So again, what happens, and part of the reason we do that, because I think it's important to understand, is our biggest cost centers are airfield and terminal. I'll talk about this a little bit more. But if we have more CARES in a given year, what that means is we would end up giving more of that money back to the airlines. So that's part of the reason we want to keep it for our best interest. Obviously, we're trying to balance it out between our needs and keeping our customers happy. Talk about the ARPA, and it's really ARPA, even though it's kind of a multi-grants that are kind of under that umbrella of CARES. At this point, the only thing that's left for us is the ARPA part of the CARES grants. You have to maintain at 1.25. You can see at 127,000 is our connector that's built into our bond debt service number, 127,000. You remember when we first did this deal, that number was less than 100,000 that we thought it was going to be just because of the interest rates going up. And there's some non-recurring one-time estimated expenses of 2.4, which is a really important number to keep in mind. And some of that is one-time expenses, but it's also nice to haves. So some things there that we're doing when we have the resources. And one of them, if you remember when we did our pension and we added an extra 2% for the people that aren't in the fund. We don't have to do that, but if we have it, we try to do it while we have those resources available. Some of that's demolition, some other things, but obviously if we get to the point where we have to belt trim, some of that stuff might have to come off the table. Again, most of the stuff is the same as it was last month. In fact, I think it's all the same on what our assumptions are for our budget. You can see where we are with our estimated passengers versus where we were, it shouldn't be not passengers, but operations. So we're slightly lower than we were for this year, but in the same ballpark. And then you can see here our passengers, again, slightly up a little bit from this year, from the 2023 budget, but again, still in the same ballpark. Number 6, the ones that really changed a little bit. Originally, I think we had 8 across the board. It's kind of a placeholder. Final numbers came in slightly different than that. Mainly on the terminal side, that 10.6 number, but the other one's 8 on the landing and apron fees of 1.4. And those are the final numbers versus 2023, what we have in here. Some of the other assumptions that we have in there are the same as we had last month. And if anybody has any questions while I'm going along, please feel free to stop me. And this is just kind of breaking it down by, total employees and hours. You can see, I think we talked about this a lot last month, those hours there, that 499 is really what we're trying to manage. But you can see that we're not that far off, even though we don't have as many total employees as is on the budget there. And this is just breaking them down by department. Again, you can see where they are at this point.
Go back a slide. So as we increase, then the plan is to increase the number of employees.
But you have an increasing number of employees, but what will happen is you'll cut back on some of the hours.
So the hours don't go up proportionally.
The hours, right, because the hours, we're really managing the hours it needs to run the airport. So if we don't have the bodies, people have to work overtime, and that's not a long-term solution, obviously, but in the short term, it does help us. And then, or we do without. And again, that's not a long-term solution. So it's just kind of managing those hours. But you can see, the the full-time employees are off some, but you can see those hours aren't that far off. You got to get the work done some kind of way. So that's kind of how it works. Good, thanks for the question. Good question. Please come on, sit down. I want you to stand up the whole time. You got to sit next to Mr. Eagle's jacket. He needs company.
That was a nice win last night.
Okay, thank you.
You would have never guessed that, would you? And this is kind of one that we threw in here. We just wanted to give you a feel for our hours versus our peers. And we have 10 peer airports that we use, and the two that we're most familiar with are Harrisburg and Scranton. And you can see where our hours are versus their hours. And a lot of that is based on how we do our business. It's different than how they do theirs. Because we do a lot of stuff in-house. They're doing a lot of stuff out-house. For example, we have our own police, our own fire, our own FBO, our own bellhops. We have all that stuff that we have that other airports contract out.
I'm also assuming they don't see the cargo that we see.
They do.
Do they?
They do. They
Yeah,
have pretty good
Wilkes-Barre
cargo.
would not. Harrisburg.
Harrisburg for sure.
Across our competitive set, cargo's up.
I would say nationally right now, cargo is down. Yeah, we're seeing cargo actually going the other direction at this point.
And I know it's not the sexy thing to talk about is when we talk about cargo weight up, but that doesn't necessarily equate to dollars because it's really the gross landed weight is where we get our money from. So more weight doesn't necessarily mean more money. So that's just something to keep in mind. But you can see, and the other part down there is the low-cost carrier percentage over there versus, so our numbers, and you go down there, and that's really down in 2018 at the bottom. You see they were 15, and they kind of leveled out around 2020. But you see our number keep climbing.
Is
Our
part of that way we handle Allegiant as well?
well, the fact that
Because that's-
Allegiant's a crew base
Actually,
here
have
and
a
they're
base here.
expanding, right?
Because of the, not only the base, but the fact that we service their,
Right, but if you also see why they're lagging behind in the traffic,
yeah,
is because our traffic increase is really coming from our low-cost carrier, and theirs isn't.
right.
And nobody's getting anything from the legacy carriers, so that's really where it's
But
coming
again, more hours dedicated to Allegiant
Right.
because of the
Yeah.
base.
from. And Allegiant, and that's a great point, Allegiant is a high touch.
Yeah.
So, when you think
Gotcha.
about some customers that require a lot more housing, business travelers, they're familiar with the airport, they boom, 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 boom. But, your leisure passenger that doesn't travel as much, they need a lot more assistance to get in and out through the airport, which necessarily doesn't lead to dollars. Then we break down our assumptions again. All of the union contracts are per their CBAs. The non-union, we have a 3% in there. You can see some of the other ones. And again, that one, number 4, is one we always harp on. This year, let's keep our fingers crossed for another mild winter. I don't know if we get 2 of them in a row, but, and it's really number of events, because the smaller events take up just as much money as some of the bigger events, because it's a certain amount just to kind of get things going, and that doesn't change. So if it's a half an inch, it's expensive. And 5%, that number didn't change on the medical. I know that came up last month. That's still a good number. So, but, everybody else is on, except for the Teamsters, is on the qualified high deductible plan. Everything else is all per the contracts. And we are going to increase the non-union medical contribution about $3 for singles, which takes them up to, wait for it, about $36 per pay. I know it's crushing, but it's in line with what most of everybody else's payments. Full-time employees, this is again one of our assumptions. You can play games on these budgets when you talk about what do you assume new people in. I've seen people do that in other companies where they want only single people to come in because it's obviously cheaper than a full family. So we assume employees and child is just kind of a middle of the road for our budget. Dental, we've been having no increases since we switched over, I believe in 2020, to a better plan. We do assume our 2% again on payroll for unemployment. Again, we self-insure. Our number has not been over 2%. I think the only time it was over 2% was during COVID. But normally it's a pretty low number, but we have to put a placeholder in there. It would be irresponsible to put nothing in there. And we got no increase on our workman's comp, we're just assuming that we'll have none again in November, because that's the last 2 months of next year.
Who's the dental insurance carrier?
MetLife. We switched from the Guardian to MetLife, so we got a higher maximum, better plan, and it was cheaper.
You know, assuming you're self-funded on the dental and
No,
also.
we're not, we're actually
You're not?
self-insured.
Self-insured.
Or just, regular insurance. Because it would be, you would have to piggyback it on the Benetcon plan if you did it that way, because it's separate. I mean, you could do an ASO on the dental, but it's, like I said, it's been running pretty well. Again, on our self-funded medical, we use whatever we pay the maximum because we're 115 aggregate. So we pay 115% of what the expected costs are. So we pay 15% more because we're self-funded, but whatever we don't use, obviously there's a 15% cushion in there, comes back the following year as a rebate once that year is finalized. So you can see what those numbers are over the years, but through, I think through July or August, we had about 100K. So now it was, 294, but we're assuming 100 just to be conservative through the end of the year, because sometimes you get hit toward the end of the year on some of this stuff. And all the other assumptions. Any questions on that? And this is just kind of looking at it on a big screen here, and just kind of like what you see on that. If you go with our financials, kind of that, what we call a P&L1, that net income number. Revenues, you can see there, that's one of the things I focus on, is that number there, that 3%. Total revenues, 3%. Net revenues, 5%. But then you look at our expenses, 7%. Those are things that we have to look at long-term. That's why we're looking at that 2.4 one-time incremental expenses as something to monitor. But you can't sustain growth if your expenses are outpacing your revenue. It's just not sustainable long-term. But for 2024, our net operational income is relatively close to what we had budgeted for 2023.
So just if you go back there, Todd, a question on the non-aviation leased areas. We're looking at
Well, expenses?
yeah, on the expense side, like we're looking at a 15% decrease in that. Is that just because we're leasing more areas, I guess? On the expense side?
Yeah, on the expense side, I gotta think, what do you think that is, Shane? Off the top of my head, I'm not thinking what that is. I'll get back to you on
I'm just curious, like, 50%
I don't know
decrease
exactly
in
off the top of my
expenses.
head what it is, but I'll take a look and see. I mean, you're talking 63 grand, and I don't know if there's some one-time expenses in there for this year.
Yeah, if it's a one-off, I kind of get it.
It could have been some of the demolition, maybe. Maybe it's some of the real estate stuff. I don't know. Maybe it's some of the real estate taxes, but I'll get you an answer for that. That's a
Curious.
great question.
Thank you.
Because normally they don't go down, but.
Right, it's, right.
Then breaking them down where we are, again, you can see that we end up about 52,000 less than we were from operational income than we were this year. So pretty much in line with this year's budget. Obviously, the numbers are a little higher, but the nets get you relatively close. Miscellaneous income, and not a lot in there. And that's actually a typo there. Net income should really be net interest. I just noticed that if you look at these things a lot, you see that 480 up there, that's actually net interest. You look at these things so much, you just don't see. But that is actually interest, so that numbers went up. We talked about that earlier, that we've done a good job of kind of managing between things and getting good interest. Net income is down there at 1.463 that you've seen before at the very bottom there. And this is just kind of breaking down where we use our revenue. Obviously, our biggest piece is salary and wages. And then you can see benefits represent about 50 cents of every dollar spent on wages we spend on benefits. And then we have other expenses, demolition, electricity, you name it, that goes in materials and supplies, debt service, lease payments, and then residual income. That's just kind of breaking it down on a cash basis of where the money goes. Because sometimes, it's not really on an accrual basis, but on a cash basis, where is your money going? And that's kind of breaking it down. And this is kind of that chart we talked about before. You can see there on M that in 2023, without CARES, our number was a 0.93. We have to be right about here. And we need to be at 1.25. Obviously, if you go above that, the number L is 1.72. So that includes the CARES, which is this number L here. So what it's really saying is we have to be able to pay at least 125% of our debt service with our net revenues. So, and without CARES in 2023, we couldn't have paid it, obviously, but there was a big number with it. The same thing this year without CARES, the projection, we're fine, but then you can see for the 2024 budget, obviously, it's a little bit better, and we're still good with CARES. But then as we start weaning off, you see that number going down, 2025 estimate, 1.46, it's going to be 1.47. That number without CARES is 1.16, and then you see when we get down to 2026, we're at 1.21. That's why that incremental expenses, now we might not take them all out, but some of them are going to come out automatically, the demolition and some of those things. But obviously, we will have to do some degree of belt trimming to kind of manage our debts if things go as we see them now. A lot can change. And you can see up there in yellow, those numbers could change. Like we said, we have the 2025, our debt service, we have to refi that. So I don't know what that number is going to be. So we'll have some additional debt service that'll change some of those numbers. You know, we might be adding some. So it's just something to keep in mind as we kind of look forward. Obviously, we never want to get in a situation where we're not meeting our debt service, because then we got to deal with the bank. And this is kind of, we never really showed this on the front end, but this is kind of what we're projecting if everything comes in according to budget. If everything comes in the budget, you can see down there, look at number 10 and number 11. 2.6 negative on airfield and about 3.6 on terminal. And again, that is a reflection of the fact of how much we have to subsidize our rates to remain competitive, to remain attractive to the airlines. So, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, but you can see that those ones, you know, we 1 to 5 are supporting the ones from 6 to 11. And obviously we know number 2 is going to go away at some point. That's why I keep bringing it up over and over and over again, probably to the point where everybody's like, I know.
Hey, Todd,
Yes, somebody.
if we raise, this is Dawn, if we raise our rates slightly, will we still remain competitive?
Give me one. Great question. You must have known where I was going. You must have known where I was going. Hey, I got to slide you a couple of bucks later. Thank you very much. I'm going to handle that with my next slide. Great question.
Before you leave that one,
Let's go back.
the parking and roadway includes a 5% increase?
We put one in there.
July.
We put one in there for July as a placeholder.
Is that high enough?
Well, at this point, it's a conservative number. So we'll see. You know, if we can raise it more, we will. We're going to engage a consultant and figure out how we're going. It's a dynamic pricing, so it's not 5% across the board. It would be, you know, maybe you pay a little bit more for a week, or maybe you pay, you know, it works out to a 5 in our mind, but
So the dynamic, you can't predict what that.
Right.
the
Right.
final's
And
gonna be.
again, obviously,
Dynamic
whenever you
pricing.
raise the prices, some people say, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, even if you raise it 5, it doesn't mean you get 5. It means hopefully you get 4. Because some people say, I'm not going to do that. But I think our pricing can go up, because I think our prices are still a little low. We haven't raised them in a while.
Yeah.
So, to Dawn's question, again, you can kind of see what we've been talking about as far as subsidizing the rate. So, there is about almost $4.8 million of surplus of subsidy, not surplus, subsidy in our rate base for 2024, and we're still asking for 8.1% on the landing fee and the terminal at 10.6. Our rates were high already. You can see the subsidies that we put in 2023 and then in 2022. Again, if years ago we wanted to be below $4 on the landing fee. I mean, obviously, inflation and everything, but you can see we're trending upward, and as we have less and less cares to throw at that rate base, it becomes a little bit more challenging. But you can see that on the terminal, that if we didn't do that subsidy, that number would be $164.11 versus $107.84. So again, we're trying to balance a lot of these things because all of our airports, our airlines are here by ordinance. So they can, if the rates get uncompetitive, they can just say, we're out of here. And again, it's not all, and they all make money, but the question is, they have to make enough for it to be worthwhile to put the resources here. So that's the issue. It's not that they're not making money. They got to make enough to keep it here because they can go somewhere else and make more money. Does everybody get that? Again, it's a balancing act. We're juggling things as much as we can. That's why we did take care of all of our folks as much as we can, while we can. But again, we got some turbulence coming up that we have to address. But this is always when we have a lot of meetings with our consultant. And 8% is a relatively high number. And we check with them to see, is that going to be enough? And they said, as long as you're in 8 to 12, you're okay. But don't go over that.
That's the consultants?
Yes. And they're dealing with a lot of airports and seeing where we are.
Have we ever lost the airline because of our rates?
Not yet, but
I guess the better question is, have we not gotten any airlines because
Yes.
of our rates?
that has definitely happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely has happened. And again, that is the number one thing we deal with when we deal with the airlines. We send out the rates and charge. They say, why are your rates so high? And again, it goes back to how we run our airport. And again, a lot of it is because of the downtime, or we have so much that we're managing. We have a lot of time, we could do more service and the cost wouldn't go up relatively much more because we already have the personnel and the infrastructure in place. It's just, we need more service to kind of level off some of those costs. And I talked about other expenses, I put them in here, I put them in last one, just to kind of get an idea of what those numbers are. Because somebody said, well, what are the other expenses? You can kind of see. And a lot of these numbers I put in here, they're not really items that you have a lot of flexibility with. There's not a whole lot you can do with your insurance. I mean, we put it out to bid, we do all that stuff, but, we're not going to save $100,000 on insurance. We're just not. Maintenance and repairs. Some of this stuff, yeah, you can, there's some nickel and dimes there, but there's no quarters. When you look through some of these things, payment in lieu, my favorite, professional services and some of these other things. But if you talk about the things that we have, there's not a whole lot of things that we have a lot of control over. Dues and subscription is a huge number, and that's a lot of our IT, all of that stuff that everybody has to do. And we want to make sure our airport is safe, and hopefully we don't get hacked, and all the other good stuff. And this is kind of breaking down our uses of CARES, and you can see down at the bottom what's all involved in CARES. We've got, we had the original stuff that we got from the counties that helped us out, the indirect CARES they gave us. We had the ERISA money, FEMA money, and then the ARPA money, and also the original CARES Act money. So you can see there kind of what we've done. 2020, we have 4.2 million of CARES that we used. Then in 2021, we used 3.5. This year, so far through 10 months, we've used 2.3 million. We're going to use another 367,000 in December. And then next year, you see our 2.7, and then you see our number for 2025. And then that's it. It's all gone. So, and you can see the total down there, that $18 million is all gone. We make good use of it.
And we can, as we did in 23 to 24, we can slide money from 24 to 25 if our performance.
We can, but that's kind of a slippery slope, as we talked about, as we get closer to the end. Because what happened, that's what we did this year. We pushed it back, and it helps us a little bit. But if, let's just say, for argument's sake, we push 700,000 back to 2025, that's it. We got to use it in 2025. Now you got a big cliff. We go from 2025 to 2026. Again, hopefully, we're talking about a more robust airport in another year or two, and some of this becomes a moot point. But you kick that can,
I understand.
you have to use it in there's no more kicking it at that point. Great question. And then this is our cash flow, just broken down into quarters, January and then the other quarters, so you can kind of see what's going on with that. Breaking them down, nothing overly exciting, and then you can kind of see what we talked about on the cash flow, what we talked about on the operating financials for October. And then this is just pushing it all the way out to December. You can see again, our lowest month at this point is projected in January at 189. I think that's it. Any questions? I know I went through a lot of stuff. It's a lot of information. We are juggling. But any questions? And before I just want to give some acknowledgement to some of the folks that behind the scenes, Mr. in the dark over there, Shane.
He's not in the park anymore.
You know, that did a lot of work on the budget, and really appreciate Scott, another guy. And Karen has helped us actually, on a part-time basis. She was the previous Shane, before Shane, and then the rest of the accounting staff. Again, it takes a lot of people. We don't have a specific budget department. We have a finance department that does a whole lot of stuff. So people jump in and really work together to put together a great product for everybody.
And, it sounds like you're working well with the consultants also.
Yes, we are.
It seems like a good team in place for that.
Because we've got to get it now, because again, we don't operate in a vacuum.
Yeah.
We want it, because again, in the perfect world, we would say, here's the cost, pay it, and move on. But we can't do that, because somebody says, I'm not paying that much for that, and then we got a problem. So it is a balancing act, and that's why it's important to have a good team in place. So thank you for all the teammates. Thank you, Shane, in the dark over there. Again, and thank you for the board for the support, because again, it's a team effort. Everybody here, all the directors, everybody works together to kind of put this together. And again, I always put up there managed expectations, because we have a lot of people, no one that's on the phone, that really, want, a lot of things, because again, we have more needs than we have money. So it's usually kind of like balancing that out and figuring it out so we can come up with a balanced budget and come up with something that we can feel good about and move forward with. Any other questions? All right.
So a motion to accept the budget presentation for presentation to the board with the change of income to.
Yeah, change that net income to net interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we doing this as a recommendation to the board, or just
Recommendation.
recommendation to the board?
Yeah, it's got to be.
I'll make the motion to recommend.
Accept for presentation.
And the plan is, just for everybody's basis, the plan is to not go over all this again. I'll do a much shorter version on Tuesday. I know how much you'll enjoy hearing me talk, but we get the basis. The key is to really go through this stuff in detail, ask questions, vet it in here, and then we can kind of go to the board at that point when we've kind of asked all the hard questions before
So
we
we have Mike first, Robert second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next.
All right, thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We give Todd a break here for a minute.
Thank you.
It's,
Everybody else will break.
yeah. I'll go through these pretty quickly. I don't have as many because, Todd really talked through a lot of the components of the financial aspects, but really, we went through some of the detail last month. But just kind of a quick recap, kind of looking at an 8-year history. You kind of look at the 2024 budget now, based on the Exhibit A, which I'll get to in a minute. It's about 11.4 million of LNAA share. And if you look at, again, the budget Todd just went through with the cash flow, that's the number that ties out at the end in terms of our payments as well as our grant receipts, which will show in a minute. Talked to this a little bit last month, but again, we include contingencies in the projects. Again, a lot of needs, so it's really focusing on safety critical projects, strategic initiatives, capacity, making ourselves, very resilient with that. And then again, capital budget is built in the cash flow, so we manage that throughout the year, adjust timing if needed, depending on how the cash is working. And then again, in terms of the departmental projects, we did add a carryover, basically with some of the timing, lead timing in terms of getting some of the equipment that was in this year's budget, though, that we'll be receiving in next year. But since we're paying it next year, it's got to come out of the 2024 budget. And then, the categories I'll get into later in terms of where those fell in the budget. So again, if you saw in the budget, this is Exhibit A. We talked about the projects last month, but you can see the total program cost, again, with the multi-phases. how it's broken out, but then the 2024 project cost is really what we have identified in the cash flow of what we're paying next year. Again, our share, taking out grants. And again, we've talked about, again, a lot of the projects, you can see where the numbers fall at the bottom there. Again, further down that Exhibit A, you got our 12 major non-grant projects we've talked about. Again, they're aligning with our 8-year projected capital program, the strategic vision that we've been kind of talking about of maintaining existing infrastructure, accommodating demand and capacity, and then revenue, potential non-aeronautical revenue generating opportunities. So again, you can see the cost, total program for the year. And again, without grant funding, the cost is really our share, which is a little bit easier to follow. You can see the bottom there. Then again, moving further down that sheet, just to make it easier, the cumulative department spending, that line 28 is what's on Exhibit B, which I'll show in a minute, but that's all the vehicles, equipment, air handlers, those kind of things that we work with our procurement department to purchase, and a lot of the other departments. Capital lease payments that we have to show, and then line 31, the grant funding receipts associated with the 2023 share are things like the RACB funding for the connector, timing of, which I'll talk about in the business committee, our runway package program where we finished the phase this year, but we're getting reimbursed next year and making some final payments. So rather than showing all those projects in the beginning, that's where the funding ends up. So again, I mentioned that just shy of 11.4, you'll see is again tied into the cash flow that Todd just went through. So again, I mentioned with Exhibit B, this year we had about 72 departmental projects, so a little bit more, but what we did this year, based on what we identified in terms of, again, some of the long lead time items, the market volatility that still changes as we make orders, and some operational flexibility. In the budget, really the 1s, 2s, and 3s make up that 3.281 number. And then the 4s are ones that we know are critical, but again, as Todd alluded to, we only have so much money to do those projects. So if things change with 1s, 2s, and 3s in terms of timing, if something in 4 breaks down, we have more issues, it gives us a little bit of flexibility, but maintaining that 3.2 number in terms of what we're approving. And again, you see the breakdown in the projects. Again, a high amount in the operation critical, which includes those 2023 rollover projects, regulatory, which we did switch from last month with some of the color coding, because regulatory really don't have a choice. We have to do it in order to stay in compliance with whatever that project is. And I believe that's it. Just a quick highlight, just going through the exhibits, but happy to answer any questions.
I want us to accept this for presentation to the board, so I need a motion for that.
Sure, Frank.
Paul and Robert, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, recommended.
Thank you.
Rates and charges.
This is just kind of formalizing the rates that we have. Kind of showed you in the last slide. This is just a sheet that we send out to the airlines to follow. And the only difference between signatory and non-signatory is they pay us 7% load if they haven't signed a signatory agreement. So that's just a 5.22, which you saw on the other sheet. But if they're a non-signatory, they pay 7% more than that. And all the other stuff is reflective of what we already discussed. So this is just one that we have to do a separate approval for. So pretty cut and dry. Any questions?
Any questions on that?
All right. Thanks.
So we're going to approve this one, motion to approve the rates and charges. Mike, Paul, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's a wrap on that, thank you. Any new business? And then motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. All right.
Go right in.
I gotta go. Thanks. See ya.
No, I'll be back.
Does everybody need to wake up after Todd?
Wow.
Yeah, we need more coffee.
I need one. Yeah.
Yeah, we can keep moving. So welcome to the Business Committee, November 21st. So Vet, can we please take a roll call?
Yes, sir. Justin Grimstraw,
Here.
Ann Baum, Don Gottschall,
Here.
James Irwin, Jeff Matskin, Glenn Reedman,
Present.
Chris Worley. We have a quorum.
All right, any public comment?
No, sir.
All right, Ryan, you wanna come back up? Actually, let's do the meeting minutes first. Move the meeting minutes for, all right, perfect. Got a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Ayes have the sword. Ryan, now you can come up. For capital projects update.
All right, so we'll go through typical update. It's getting a little quieter as we're getting to a winter shutdown in terms of the construction projects. We kind of focus more on the administrative items with a lot of our grants, and obviously with the budget we just talked about. But in terms of runway program, we are really in winter shutdown except for a couple of small items I'll talk about. But again, the major components left, there's really the shoulder work, north side getting completed first next year, and then the south side kind of in that pinkish red color. Package 3, project closeout has been submitted to the FAA, so that's been completed. Really waiting for them to review that as well. That looks like, is this the right PowerPoint? It looks like it's different. Sorry, real quick. Yeah, it looks like it's the last month's or no?
Oh.
Let me just check quick. All right, perfect, there we go. All right, thanks, sorry about that. So, you see here, so we did submit this closeout, again, they're reviewing, and then, as you mentioned, the really reason we show it is because we're waiting on a final reimbursement of $271,000. Not as much as some of the other ones, but again, it's still money we'd like to have. So package 4, really just working through the punch list items, all the other components have been complete. Final markings were completed here on Gulf earlier in the month. And again, next spring with some of the finalization of the punch list items, we'll work through that final closeout as well, and that project will come off. So in terms of package 5, winter shutdown, in terms of the shoulder construction too cold to pave, but what they are doing here later in December is replacing all of the LED edge lighting to LEDs. Take about 3 or 4 nights to go along the entire end of the runway. And I think, as I mentioned prior, in other months, they'll come back and put them back into some of the new cans once they get all of the shoulders replaced. But having those LED edge lights for winter will be definitely helpful because we get a lot of feedback in terms of how much brighter they are than the incandescents we've had. Bashna Boarding Bridge project, really the biggest thing here is we did review and provide comments on the submittal packages for the new bridges for 3 and 10. So sent those off to VRH, and they're working with JBT, the bridge manufacturer, and then just working through some of the contract and submittals for the foundation components, so we can start that in the spring as well. Parking garage, the biggest update here, I think we talked about, we had the RFQP out on the street. We had I think 16 or 17 consultants on the pre-proposal meeting. We ended up getting 6 responses, which is really good, and you can see who responded there. So we're currently reviewing the proposals, working with ADCI, who's helping manage it, to review those. And then, as we mentioned, we're looking to hopefully schedule interviews with the committee in January to, again, move that forward if that's the way, we're happy with who submitted the proposal. So more to come on that, but getting 6, I think, was a good turnout. Some of the demolition we've been talking about, again, that we've been working through. The farmhouse on Dauphin Street, Hangar 7, really everything you see here, we're looking to complete in December, early January. Just working through some of the permitting right now at the township. Environmental testing in the one house in the middle was completed actually yesterday. And as we'll kind of talk more about in the connector meeting, or the update, the tunnel escalators have been removed. They're currently taking down the elevator shaft and cleaning up that area as well. And then, as we mentioned, with the budget for next year, really, once these are complete, we'll focus more on that government building component, because that has a lot more operational impacts that we need to address as part of that. Moving on to Queen City, again, this one, closeouts in progress. We just received some of the closeout documents from the contractor and the consultant. We're reviewing that. Hopefully by early next year, we can submit that closeout to get that final payment in as well. And again, with some of the updates of where we are, not much has changed. Again, trying to get some of these projects to fall off in terms of completing. And then, with the budget, we just, accept it, and then hopefully approve next month. We'll add some of those projects as we start kicking those off in the new year. That's all for this one. Happy to answer any questions. Okay. Connector. All right, in terms of the connector, a lot of items happening obviously in the tunnel, which is what we're working on now. It's looked to complete by the end of January. See some of the other items we've done. We'll kind of show again in some of the photos. In terms of the electrical, mechanical, fire protection punch list, the checkpoints being completed, drywall's up in the tunnel. The apron has been paved. The site's restored for winter, which is what we were really pushing basically last month to get done. Again, talked about the elevator and escalator removal. And then really ongoing and really what's upcoming is the tunnel finishes, preparing the pedestrian exit lanes, which you'll see some photos of that, of what they're preparing. And again, some of the other punch list items with working with the GC and the other primes. Again, you can see a picture of the apron now that's complete. It actually looks like a nice complete site, which is great. I've already started obviously using that bridge with our ground support equipment. The American buses go under there as well, so it just helps the operation kind of get back to normal, which we're excited about. Again, just another view from that side. Getting that paved, that was again a good thing to have. Again, some other shots of that area. These are the pedestrian exit lane, or really backflow preventers at the end of the bridge. So really, when they're up and running, we're still working through some items, but really to prevent folks coming back towards the checkpoint. Again, we got the signage, but just to prevent that flow. Folks do need to go back. There's a way that TSA can let them back if they forget something at the checkpoint. But that was covered by that $600,000 grant that we had talked about a couple months back. Again, just some photos of the space, putting in the new lighting. A lot of the duct work is complete in there. So here they're actually leveling the floor for where the secure exit portals are going to go, the 4 of them that we have on order, or basically are available or ready to go now. Again, just a switchgear room. The picture on the left is basically the back kind of hallway where the existing or the previously escalators and elevator were that they're demolishing now. Again, you can see some of the wainscoting going in. That's the tunnel on the left, or the corridor right now, maintaining for passengers. So as I mentioned, you can see escalators are gone, trusses are gone. They're working on the elevator shaft as well. So again, just cleaning that area up. Hopefully it should be done probably mid-December on that. In terms of overall progress, again, you can see site restoration is now complete. Demolition of all the items within the tunnel is complete. And then you can see how they're progressing. The HVAC, electrical, fire protection, everything else in the tunnel, really to get that back up and running for more of a seamless transition for our passengers. Again, talk about the phase of where we are. Again, you kind of see the secure exit portal rendering, but looks something like that. And again, as we talked about, finishing up a lot of the components kind of in the ceiling and overhead in December. Secure exit portals coming in January, and then obviously once that's complete, acceptance, beneficial occupancy of the tunnel, and then really just any punch list items after that. So you can see we're getting to the tail end of this phase of the project. Again, of costs we've expended, still working on some grant receipts as well, but again, just trying to get this to the finish line here over the next 2 months. So happy to answer any questions on that. So I got.
Any questions for Ryan? All right, seeing none. Any new business? All right, seeing none. We will take a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.
We'll move right to the executive committee. So that would you take the roll, please?
John Hayes, Glenn Reedman,
Present.
Justin Grimshaw,
Here.
Mike Sterschik.
Here.
Paul Anthony.
Any
Yeah.
public comment?
No, sir.
Public comment. A motion for approval of the minutes of October 26th. Do I have a second? Paul or Justin, do you have a second?
Oh, second.
Guys are sleeping over
Late night last
Read
night,
too
man.
much.
Not like it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, a motion for the approval of the Florio Perucci Steinhardt invoices for October 23.
Motion, I'm awake now.
Second by Paul. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will go to the approval of Rockefeller Sewer easement and settlement. I guess Darren?
Darren's on the line, I think, still hopefully for us.
Darren,
Yeah,
are
good
you
morning,
there?
everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, so as it seems to be at the end of every year, we seem to have a Rockefeller item to approve, but we got it in November this year, so no December meeting for it, so happy about that. There's just really two things here, kind of cleanup items left over from all the Rockefeller project that's been going on for the last several years. The first one's a sanitary sewer easement with Hanover Township, and I have some more information on the next couple slides, but that easement is already in place and being used, so it's just an administrative item to basically dedicate that over to Hanover Township. Then the second one is the termination of a reimbursement agreement that we had executed back in 2016 when we were working with the Rockefeller Group to acquire a bunch of right-of-way for the road projects associated with the FedEx project, which basically amounted to us acquiring several properties just adjacent to the airport, and there's one property left that we need to settle on with Rockefeller. So that's sort of the background. So that if you want to go to the next slide there. This shows the sewer easement up off of Willowbrook Road. Again, it's in place, it's being used. It was basically started with the FedEx project to get the capacity down into the sewer system from up there. This has always been contemplated that it would be conveyed over to Hanover. We did need to satisfy the FAA requirement for fair market value, so Rockefeller will be paying the authority $10,000 on behalf of the township to satisfy that requirement. It's a subterranean easement, so basically we can still use the property above it. There's nothing precludes us from doing anything over top of the sewer line. We do have the right to relocate it if we ever needed to. This is in the area where there's the potential third runway at some point in time on our master plan. So if that ever came to fruition and we had to relocate the easement, we do have the right to do that. And of course, the easement includes all of our standard FAA provisions and navigation language. And this has been vetted by both the solicitor's office and our aviation council. So I'll stop here and ask if there are any questions on the sewer easement before we move on to the next piece. All right, hearing none, we'll keep moving. So this is the reimbursement agreement. So like I said, we entered this back in May of 2016. And you can see from the picture on the right of the slide there, all that area in the bluish color are all properties that we acquired through that reimbursement agreement. Those have all been settled on. We knew from the beginning as we started acquiring the right of way that if we could get these properties, we wanted them as they're all adjacent to the airfield, you know, contiguous to the airfield. So they've all been acquired. All those structures have now been demolished. That's all been kind of incorporated into the airfield. The one across Ray Street there on the corner of Race and Willowbrook in green is the parcel that we still need to settle on. And back in 2016, we weren't sure that that was one that we wanted necessarily, but it is now on our master plan for acquisition. So it's definitely a property that we want to acquire. So we've acquired 6 parcels as part of this. This is the 7th. We had this parcel appraised a couple times. Most recently was last year. It appraised at about $396,000. We've agreed with Rockefeller to settle this for $235,000, so obviously quite a bit less than the appraised value. And the termination agreement that we've negotiated, again, that's been vetted by the solicitor and our aviation council, releases all obligations under the reimbursement agreement for not only us, but Rockefeller. It does not release either of us from any other obligations from other agreements. That's important because we still maintain a lot of, there's a lot of language in other agreements that have survived, like our master agreement, things like that, a lot of indemnification and other language. So we wanted to be sure to keep this a very narrow release only for this one agreement so that we still maintain those indemnifications from other agreements through the Rockefeller project. So I went through that pretty quickly, but certainly happy to answer any questions anybody has on it.
Seeing no questions, I'll take a motion for approval of the Rockefeller sewer easement and settlement.
So moved.
Move, second, please.
I'll take the second.
Second by Justin. All in favor?
Aye.
We will move to Government Relations Department update.
Well, thank you very much. This is the first time since May that I had a chance to address the board on government relations as well as the community engagement portion of the organization. So I started with this picture because I think it's important for us to know that really the line, our reputation precedes us. Our reputation coming out of this project certainly has elevated us across the board at the federal, state, and local level. Just recently, we participated in a call with Congresswoman Wild to talk about the 2-year anniversary of the bill passage for the bipartisan infrastructure law. We were on the call with Becky Bradley from Lehigh Valley Planning Commission and us to discuss this project. It goes a long way when we're talking to our federal, state, and local legislators that we deliver. And we delivered a moment for the valley, we delivered a moment for the airport, and really will transcend the way people travel through this airport and this region forever. So I think it's important to know that when we accomplish things like this, it goes a very, very long way as we talk to them about future infrastructure projects. And there'll be no shortage of infrastructure here at the airport going forward. Checking in at the checkpoint. So over the last few months, we've had many visitors. U.S. Senator Bob Casey was here. He wasn't able to be at the event when we unveiled it in July, but he had an opportunity to come back and really reenacted it for him, unveiling it the way we did so he could enjoy the moment because, again, we did receive a lot of federal support. The picture in the middle was actually Director Anthony McCluskey from the PennDOT Bureau of Aviation, a huge supporter for the airport throughout this project. He wanted to come back. He had been here many times before when it was in its construction. He's an engineer, so he loves to be able to see these projects take to fruition and certainly very happy about what we're able to bring to aviation in the Commonwealth. Representative Ann Flood came through. She met with Mike Kickline from the TSA, Senator Casey on the bottom there. And I leave the picture of Representative Mako in there for one reason. That was actually the first day that we opened it to the public. It was 4:30 in the morning, and he was not happy to see me around the corner taking pictures of everybody coming through. But I will tell you that he played a role, and everybody, both Democrat, Republican, across the board, certainly realized the importance of this project to the Valley, and to be able to see him go through that very first day was a proud moment for everybody. Calendar legislative meetings that we've had since May. We went to Washington, D.C. on June the 7th to meet not just with U.S. Senator John Fetterman's office, but we also went to see John Augustine from the Department of Transportation. Again, building that relationship for the airport with the U.S. DOT. Having the Secretary here a couple of times. Again, we're on the map. They understand what we're trying to do here from an infrastructure perspective, and we want to make sure that we maintain that strong relationship with the DOT. We're at a legislative luncheon for our Northeast delegation. We met with Ed Nielsen, the chairman of the Transportation Committee. There's some transportation bills coming up over the next couple of years at the state level. We want to make sure they understand from an infrastructure perspective what we're doing. Then also we met with Senator Miller, Senator Boscola, Senator Coleman, and we met with the policy director and executive director for the Transportation Committee. Again, creating that communication line where they know what ABE, what the Lehigh Valley plans to do going forward to enhance travel. And then for PennDOT, Mike Carroll and members of his staff, including Director McCluskey. From a state funding perspective, since the last time I was able to speak to the board, We did receive $940,000 from the PennDOT Multimodal Fund. I point that out because only 50 projects across the state got money from the PennDOT Multimodal Fund, and we were one of them. It's not a large pot of money, but that project, I know when Tom and I sat down with Secretary Carroll earlier this year, that project, which was this portion right here of the building of that road infrastructure for when we have the hotel and any additional non-aeronautical revenue on that beachfront property. Also, if we move the airport roadway, airport entrance down on Airport Road, we needed that road infrastructure where the current economy booth, toll booth is to build that up. So again, it really meets the requirements for a multimodal, and we're certainly very, very happy to have that grant be awarded. Also from state funding, we have a couple of applications submitted for DCED multimodal and PennDOT multimodal. So what we're looking to do here is just some roadway access improvements on the north side, intersection improvements at Ray Street and Willowbrook South. If the potential comes to expand our air cargo operation, we talk so much about air cargo, that would be on the north side of the field. So just to prepare ourselves, these things don't happen overnight. Senator Miller has always made it clear to me going forward that, look, these funding mechanisms, you don't ask for it Monday and get it Tuesday, right? It takes a whole year. We look at what RACP's done to get that funding through. So again, going down that road, it's important to continue to put in these applications going forward to see if we can generate some of that state funding and state support in order to accomplish the task. Nothing imminent on the horizon, but just to, again, try to secure some funding. From a federal standpoint, the airport terminal program is still open. That was the $5 billion over a 5-year period, $1 billion a year from the bipartisan infrastructure law. We were able to connect on $5 million of that for the TSA checkpoint. Well, now we're back in the mix, and we're going to try to do a terminal modernization project. You can kind of see the bulleted points of what we're looking to do over on the Wiley concourse, the satellite concourse area. These are a lot of things that we've identified, talking to passengers, talking to stakeholders, things we want to bring to the airport to make the convenient, comfortable travel experience, and really, again, enhance and improve the facility that exists right now. Some of the stuff, if you just look at seating with integrated charging stations, there's never enough charging stations at the airport. There's not enough, outlets for people. So to be able to try to connect on some funding to alleviate some of the burden on the airport will certainly be important. So we just submitted this application recently, and we'll keep everybody updated as we go forward. So that's the governmental side on where we're at. Several applications in and some great communication with our legislators. From a community engagement.
Before you go into that,
Sure, yeah.
on the grant programs for the airport road corridor piece there, the signalization and all that, is there going to be any effort to coordinate the signalization so that there's a little bit better progress along there rather than?
You're talking about moving the entrance road or the entrance to the airport down
because there's
further?
going to be an extra light.
Look,
So is
So
it
you're talking about light timing?
Yeah, about timing of those lights. Is that part of that project at all?
I don't know that we've actually stared at sort of the corridor timing of traffic.
We haven't, but that might come up as we coordinate with PennDOT.
Because the more trucks that are there, the harder it is to get through those things, and it's, the timing of those lights is pretty critical.
And I know that the studies are being done, and there's conversations, we're going to talk to PennDOT about that. That was something that came up during our conversation with Secretary Carroll when we were meant to meet with PennDOT. Again, he understands, and they understand PennDOT as a whole, the Bureau, what we're looking to try to do there.
No, I understand what you're trying to do too.
But to incorporate some of those
Yeah.
pieces to it, it's going to take a little time to make sure that we get that right. Yep. So from a community engagement standpoint, look, it's been busy. It's been very busy here at the airport. We had the Denver inaugural. We just recently had the Melbourne inaugural. We had a great plane pull. Thank you again so much to IBEW for participating in that. It was a fantastic event. That campaign actually runs through to the end of the month. So it was not just the event that they were raising for, it was a campaign through the whole month. So we're looking forward to hearing from the Special Olympics of Pennsylvania what the result was at the end of November. We'll certainly share that in the coming year. And we had the polo match over at Braden Airport. This is just to name a few things that have been going on. We continue to support the community. We have staff that's going to go over to Second Harvest Food Bank on December 13th to do the senior share program, which is packing boxes, provide nutritional items for the seniors in our community. It's a great event that we actually came in touch with from Don Gottschall during our annual meeting last year. So to be able to go back a second time, we actually went before for the military share program. So this was earlier this year, and great representation from a lot of different departments within the airport community to make sure that we're giving back as well. The future of aviation, I can't say enough about Paula Bonstein and Leanne Hill, who play a huge role in getting us out in the community. Paul's been here many years, and Leanne joined us a few years ago, but it's the events, all the things that you see from an event perspective. She was there for the plane pull. She's there for the inaugural. She does a great job leading that department to make sure everything is on point for the organization. One of the other areas we're looking to expand on is getting out in the community and talking to students, CTE programs, building the future of aviation going forward. We go to a lot of career fairs, and it's interesting that, talking to Paula the other day, she said, it's not even just jobs, it's community service hours that these students need. So it's important for us to continue to get out in the community and do this going forward, and we're going to continue to update you as we make some progress. Our Fear of Flying seminars, we're going to increase the sessions for 2024. I wanted to bold that out in the bottom. We just had one in November, another successful one. We really did get some positive feedback. So we enjoy creating the opportunity to reduce the fear for people that want to fly, and really a changing factor for us, and I've mentioned this before, is being able to sit on that aircraft. For years and years that was not possible, but now with the Legion here, getting on the aircraft, being able to, again, implement some of the things they learn in a session with a local therapist will certainly help. And we have a lot of returnees and success stories, ones that have said, we've used this and I've flown. So it's always great to see. Holiday event schedule as I wrap up. We have Shop with an Airport Cop on Saturday, December 2nd. Always a great event with the Catasauqua Area School District. The North Pole Express flight is on Saturday, December 9th. I invite the board members to attend that event. It's with families from Dream Come True, really our local Make-A-Wish. And it's really a moving day for all of us. It reminds us what the season is all about, and that everybody isn't, some are going through challenges this season, and if we can brighten their day and make it special, we certainly want to do so. So that is on Saturday, December 9th, and then the Festival of Trees and Holiday Concert Series goes the entire month of December and into January. I know John's not here today, but I wanted to point this out. We talk about public and community access. All our LNAA meetings are live streamed, available on YouTube, and I just broke down the numbers year to date in 2023, and it's pretty evenly split on views. Okay, so views come I'm not watching this 600 times, trust me. This is opportunities for people to go back and review. I know that people that have missed meetings before have the opportunity to go and see something that maybe they heard, or anybody in the public. So we put this out there, and it's important to continue that community access for everyone. And my last slide really is to outline the different ways we communicate. I always talk about on approach, and people receive them at times. But look, we have an official newsletter, Boarding Pass. GA Today is twice a year for the GA community. We do a podcast from the flight deck. We have our social media, and we e-blast monthly. Again, there's a lot going on at the airport. The more we can communicate that through these types of vehicles is going to be important for us to get our message out. So certainly it's been a very busy year, and we're looking forward to 2024. Boarding Pass will be out next month, so will the GA Today. And that's it for me. Anybody have any questions?
I have a comment.
Yes,
It's a
sir.
Fear of Flying seminar. I had awesome feedback from that. I signed my mom up for that because I'm tired of driving her 13 hours to see my brother.
This is on camera, by the way, just so you know.
It's okay.
Okay, all
She
right.
doesn't know how to
He
use
doesn't
YouTube
watch.
either. We're good. So, no, but in all seriousness, her and one of her friends did it, who has some family out in Colorado that wants to be on the plane. They're both scared. They both talked to me afterwards and told me how great they thought it was. And about the repeats in there was other people in there who took that course and said it really helped them, but they came back and they're taking it again to get over that next hump. So there's a lot of good feedback that I heard personally from people
That's
that
fantastic.
I know well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's great to hear.
The acid test is if you don't have to drive her.
My wife does all the driving. I'm just a passenger too, but.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank
What
you.
time does the North Pole event start?
So it actually had to be a little bit earlier this year because it will be a live flight for SkyWest. The event will start at 8 o'clock in the morning, when that's when families will begin to sign in. But festivities on the other side will be about 9 o'clock.
Okay.
9 o'clock to 11:30.
And certainly folks are welcome to
And
attend.
we'll send out a breakdown of the whole day going forward. I'll make sure Sylvette sends that out.
If they go through TSA to get to the other side, I mean, just a normal thing, right?
Yeah, they will, yeah. Yeah, so we can buy a pass, whatever. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thanks, Colin.
Okay, Todd's gonna give us an update on the Police Association contract.
So I could jump in because Todd will present that hopefully at board next week.
I looked confused and was like, I'm presenting?
I was like, wait a minute, didn't I do that enough today? Yeah, we're about 99% there on the contract, Mr. Vice Chair. So hope to have that buttoned up and back for the full board next week, next Tuesday. So we'll be back with that for the group.
Any questions for Tom on that? Okay. Any new business? Madam Solicitor, do we need an executive session?
No, sir.
Okay, take a motion.